So, Robin, it is toy buying season, and there are so many choices. There are so many ads. There's so much stuff out there. I mean, some of the stuff isn't that great. But what if there was an alternative? What if it was a toy that also encouraged creativity, had educational benefits? What if it was something that you and your kids could really enjoy and learn from?
Yeah, and what if it had no plastic and was 100% recyclable? Playper comes in 3 steps. You pop out these pieces, and kids love this part, and you build these toys. And this is where the STEM learning comes in. Kids learn to follow the instructions, and they learn how to construct a simple toy. And then they play with these toys, and they have silly characters with full and rich and silly backstories.
And we love silliness. We know that. I was really amazed about how durable these toys were. I don't have little kids anymore, but I work with little kids all the time. There is one set that is called the Curious Kingdom Story Starters. I love this. I am going to make use of this in my practice. There are cards that have a person, a place, and a thing. Kids choose the card and then create their own stories. It's about using imagination. It's about developing conversation, about being playful. It has all of the things that really help kids as they're learning and growing. I'll tell you, this is going to be a great tool for me. And I was amazed at how durable these toys are. They're not paper or even flimsy cardboard. They have a beautiful feel, and they are amazingly high quality.
Playper has won several awards even in the short time it's existed, including a Gold Mom's Choice Award, a Creative Play of the Year Award, a National Parenting Award, and it's also an accredited STEAM toy. Playper is giving you a special discount to get these adorable toys, and you can get 25% off any order with the promo code Fluster at playper.com. And on top of that, you'll receive free shipping through Christmas.
So go to PLAYPER.com and use code FLUSTER for 25% off with free shipping through December 25th. Your child will love these toys. Attachment means that you are a secure, loving, consistent figure in your children's life. But it doesn't mean that you are perfect. It doesn't mean that you meet their every need. It doesn't mean that you read their every expression. It doesn't mean that whenever they express any discomfort, that you're right there to make sure that you figure it out. So I want to be very clear that we do not want to move over into the other place, which I've talked about in the past, is that your goal is to eliminate all distress. Secure attachment, healthy attachment, connection doesn't mean getting rid of your children's distress.
Welcome to Season 6 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we talk about a family's anxiety and all the big feelings, too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious, and I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author, and I've been a therapist for over 30 years. Parenting can be a Flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll give you concrete steps to take and the words to say.
So, Lynn, I'm super excited for this episode today because I'm going to be a student in the front row.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, you're going to answer a listener question that I did not know the answer to. So I'm excited to learn. A listener very astutely noted how frequently you talk about the value of connection, but she asked, what is the difference between connection and enmeshment? And I don't know. So here I am in the front row, my little Hermione, ready to go, raising my hand in a minute.
Okay. Happy to have you, Hermione. So once I start talking about this, you absolutely will know the difference. You know what this is. You just maybe don't know the language that is used. But when I start describing enmeshment, you'll be like, oh yeah, it's not a subtle thing. And I'm sure you've been exposed to it. Connection. Being able to connect to other human beings, we talk about it all the time. Being able to be vulnerable when you need to, being able to have a group of people in your life, whether it's in your family or your friends, where you can be who you are, where you can be genuine, where you can be authentic, where they know who you are as a person. Because there are so many situations in relationships we have where we have to put on a different face, right? We have to be in our work mode, or we have to be in our student mode, or we have to be in our daughter-in-law mode. whatever it is, we want to know that true connection, authentic connection, is based on being able to show a range of emotions, who you are. As a parent, when we talk about connection, it sort of moves over into the idea of attachment. And there's a lot about attachment theory, but it's about being there to support and validate your child, to help them become more aware of their emotions, to model positive social connection, right? So you're teaching them what boundaries are. You're teaching them what's the difference between being really connected to somebody versus being intrusive. As a parent, you want to be connected to your child in a way that says, I see who you are, I love who you are, and I get that you are a separate person than I am. Love who you are. I love all that you bring to the world, to the family. I mean, they could have annoying behaviors too that you don't love, but I get it that you are a separate person.
You're on your own path.
You are on your own path because, interestingly, there is a really big connection between positive, healthy connection and the development of autonomy. Now, when we talk about enmeshment, that's when all of those boundaries, all of that individuation, all of that separateness starts to go away. Examples of being enmeshed. There are clinical terms here, but one of the things that we know happens is called parentification, or a child becomes a parentified child, which means that they are promoted to the role of co-parent in a family. So that would be enmeshment. It means that there's an oversharing of information, that the child almost becomes your confidant. So you're talking to your child about adult things. This can happen in a family where there are divorced parents. And so one parent is using that child to sort of process the divorce, and they're talking about the other parent in a way that is not helpful. Really, you want to think about the roles aren't clear. So there's not a clear differentiation between parent and child. We've done episodes where there's a child sleeping in the bed with the parents. And as a little child, like co-sleeping, totally fine. I've said that before. My kids were in my bed. I was nursing them. It was easy. And then it becomes a time when that child is at an age in which there needs to be a differentiation of roles and a differentiation of who is where. And oftentimes, if you've got a 12-year-old sleeping in your bed, that becomes a problem of enmeshment. The other thing that's really important when we're talking about the difference between connection and enmeshment is that when somebody is in an enmeshed role, it doesn't have to necessarily be child and parent. You can have this in a marriage. You can have it in a friendship. It's when you are responsible for the other person's emotions. So if the person is sad, mad, grieving, devastated, disappointed, you are the person either held responsible for the emotions or responsible for fixing the emotional state. That's another sign of enmeshment. Yeah.
When we come back, why don't we start with attachment theory, or what that means and what the developmental path is, from birth until those early years. But just a headline, the parentification thing, do you know that is in fact what did happen to me?
Yes.
Yes. So we can talk about that. Maybe I'm not in the first row. Maybe I'm lying on the sofa today.
You were in the first row with your very eager Hermione face. And then little by little, you were like, oh, crap. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll be right back.
Lynn, you'd be so proud of me. I have been training and lifting weights and working out with consistency for quite a few months again. And boy, do I feel fantastic.
I say this all the time. The research is really clear. The benefits are really clear. If you're looking to help your mood, to make you just feel better in so many ways, a regular exercise workout routine is a must.
I love having virtual personal training with Copilot. It is a personalized fitness solution, and every individual is unique. So your fitness journey would look look different from mine, but Copilot has an app that links you with affordable real-life coaches who customize your workouts and they tailor them to your individual needs and goals. And it's so great for the accountability factor and also just the human connection of working out with your Copilot.
Yeah, and there's flexibility too. I mean, you and I both travel a lot, and if you're committed to working out on a regular basis, you need to be able to do it where you are. And Copilot gives you that flexibility, and you can work out with or without a gym.
That's so key.
So key for so many people. I mean, how many times have I been in a hotel room and I need to figure out a way to get my workout in?
It's also just so great to know that you can go to a gym and have somebody tell you what to do, because that's where I'm at.
That's the other thing too, is that having that accountability, having somebody there that tells you what to do, that lays out a plan for you. I mean, really, it is so important for you to feel like you've got information and knowledge and support and accountability. And that's what Copilot provides for you.
I'd love it if our listeners followed my lead and they got fit to feel fabulous too. So give Copilot a try to find out why it was listed by Forbes as the top rated personal trainer app of 2023. So head to go.mycopilot.com/Flusterclux, and then you'll get a 14-day free trial and 20% off your first month of personalized fitness with your own personal trainer if you sign up before February 1st, 2024.
That's go.mycopilot.com/Flusterclux to get a free 14-day trial and 20% off your first month. Sign up for the new year and let Copilot help you reach your fitness goals.
We have a link in the show notes that will make it super easy to sign up. Did you know that 91% of those totally inconvenient and really heavy laundry detergent jugs, they end up in the oceans and in landfills, harming our planet and marine life? And I was terrified to learn that the dirty truth of recycling is that they don't get recycled. So I have found a solution: Earth Breeze. Imagine for a moment something that should have been invented a long time ago. It looks like a dryer sheet, but it's not. It's a liquidless laundry detergent sheet, and it dissolves 100% in any wash cycle, hot or cold. There's no measuring, no mess, no heavy lifting, no plastic jug. So meet Earth Breeze. It is my new favorite detergent, Lynn's new favorite detergent. It is better for the planet and so much easier to use. The packaging is lightweight and biodegradable. I signed up for the subscription immediately, and it is delivered with free carbon neutral shipping. And like magic poof, it's at my door and I get it delivered every month. More importantly, I still get a really powerful clean, and Earth Breeze is tough on stains and it fights odors, and my clothes come out clean every time. So join over 2 million Americans making a difference with Earth Breeze. And if you're still not convinced, they've got a 100% money-back guarantee, no questions asked. Trust me, there is no reason not to switch. So right now, Flusterclux listeners can subscribe to Earth Breeze and save 40%. Go to earthbreeze.com/Flusterclux to get started. That's earthbreeze.com/Flusterclux for 40% off. earthbreeze.com/Flusterclux. If you're looking to raise kids that are financially responsible, I have a lifesaver recommendation you need to check out: Greenlight. Greenlight is a debit card and money app made for families, and it gives kids and teens an easy and fun way to gain financial literacy while giving parents peace of mind. You can send instant money transfers, automate allowance, and keep an eye on kids' spending with real-time notifications. Meanwhile, your kids can begin their journey towards financial autonomy by learning how to save, invest, and spend wisely. The app includes a chores feature where you can set up recurring or one-time chores, customized to your family's needs, and reward kids for a job well done. If your household's like mine, you finally get the kids to commit to some chores, and then the accountability of paying them can be tricky. Greenlight can solve this issue so that everyone gets paid for the work they do. The app also comes with games that teach kids money skills in a fun and memorable way, and over 6 million parents and kids are learning about money on Greenlight. It's the easy, convenient way to get kids on the right path. So sign up for Greenlight today and get your first month free when you go to greenlight.com/Fluster. That's greenlight.com/Fluster to try Greenlight for free. Greenlight.com/Fluster.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, so let's talk about, you mentioned attachment theory, which I'm not sure I know what that is specifically, but I do know what attachment parenting is, because it is something that I read about and it made sense to me. And I feel like I actually did it effectively with both my kids.
Right. So attachment parenting comes from attachment theory, and attachment theory has been around for a really long time. And when we're looking at attachment, we're looking at the ability or a relationship between a parent and a child or a caregiver. You know, when I use the word parent, just know that I'm meaning anybody who happens to be raising a child, right? So whatever form your family takes. So it means that a caregiver, a parent, is giving a child security, consistency, that the child's needs are being met. So this means if we're talking about babies and attachment, we're talking about a child's basic needs of feeling secure, loved, safe, cared for, that the child is not feeling as if they are on their own at a time developmentally when they shouldn't be on their own. So attachment parenting, it's co-sleeping is part of it. But even if it's not happening, I mean, you don't have to be an attachment parent and co-sleep with your child, but that would be attachment parenting would say, I am going to be here for my child. When my child cries, I'm going to respond to that. When my child is hungry, I'm going to respond to that. When my child needs comfort and consolation, I am going to be the person to offer that. So that's where it starts.
Yeah. And it's about if you're meeting the needs of security and comfort and affection for a baby.
Yes.
They feel secure, loved, and then they will seek independence as their development allows and is appropriate.
Correct. So the whole thing about having what's called secure attachment is that sets you up for being able to develop autonomy as you mature, because you have this secure home base.
And the extreme opposite, just for like a visual for people, would be the very tragic circumstance of a child who has RAD.
Correct. Reactive attachment disorder. So that's, you are raised where the people who were supposed to take care of you did not. And so you didn't learn how to connect. You didn't trust. When a child isn't given the opportunity to attach, when they're neglected, when they're abused, the ability to attach and connect later on is hugely impacted.
And I think it's important to say that someone who believes in promoting attachment is also waiting for and supporting and encouraging the flight from the nest and all these various things as well. That's part of it. It's not about like, I'm going to have my babies with me, and then when they're 25, I'm letting them go.
Right.
It's more of an emotional style of parenting.
Correct. Secure attachment describes the ability to give your child the skills they need to attach, the ability to trust other people, the ability to get their needs met, the ability to feel like connection with other people is a good thing. And the goal in doing that is so that you can send them out into the world and they can continue to have secure attachments with other people. Absolutely. Okay, so let me say this too, as we're talking about attachment, because some of you listeners might be like, oh my God, I'm not tending to my child's every need, and I'm missing these signals, and I have 4 children, and I can't possibly pick up on all these signals.
No, you can't. It's, of course.
If you are lovingly attached to your kid, it doesn't mean that you meet their every need every moment.
Of course.
Because you know what? That's when we start to move into enmeshment. So attachment means that you are a secure, loving, consistent figure in your children's life. But it doesn't mean that you are perfect. It doesn't mean that you meet their every need. It doesn't mean that you read their every expression. It doesn't mean that whenever they express any discomfort, that you're right there to make sure that you figure it out. So I want to be very clear that we do not want to move over into the other place, which I've talked about in the past, is that your goal is to eliminate all distress. Secure attachment, healthy attachment, connection doesn't mean getting rid of your children's distress.
Definitely. Something that you said, that when I was raising my 2 babies, I was trying to absorb your wisdom as my sister-in-law. And I appreciated that if you do only have 1 child, because I had an only child for 5.5 years. But it was like, how can I raise an only child as if she were my 4th? So that I was careful not to cross into that territory. So it's always that sweet spot you say that's a very wide bridge and not a tightrope.
Right. And so there's a classic book about parenting, which I haven't read in years and years and years. I probably read it in graduate school when I was 21 years old, called The Good Enough Parent. The title right now would be the good enough parent. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be loving. So don't think about this in terms of perfection. Let's go back to the enmeshment place, though, because that's the place where it gets tricky. Most of you listening to this, I bet virtually everybody listening to this really has a wonderful, loving connection to their kids. Here's where you want to make sure that you're not crossing that line. You don't step in and make your child responsible for your emotions. There has to be separation. We're going back into all the old theories of child raising, but some of them, they're oldies but goodies. Erik Erikson talked about separation and individuation, which means you reach that developmental stage where you're supposed to move away. It happens a few times during child rearing. And one of the examples that I always give, and it's so classic, is you're at the playground with your little toddler and they venture off and they play in the sand or they go on something and then they run back to you. They touch your knee. They offer you something, right? If you remember, for those of you who are past the toddler stage, you remember they come back and they have like a feather or they have a rock or they have something that they found.
It's a touch point.
Right. And that's what T. Barry Brazelton wrote a book about that too. So there's a lot of really solid information. Enmeshment is when there is a lack of privacy, when you are stepping into your children's life in a way that doesn't respect their boundaries. Go back and listen to the episode on why you shouldn't track your child, by the way. And the child, as they become a elementary school age kid, what we call latency age, or as they become a tween and then an adolescent, there is an absolute unspoken lack of autonomy, a lack of respect of their differences from you, a lack of understanding that their emotions and your emotions are not the same. That's when it crosses into enmeshment.
Right. Allowing the space for your child to have a different emotional experience than you about the same thing.
Again, to use an example of if there's a conflicted marital relationship, there's two parents and maybe they're not living together, maybe they are living together, expecting your child to have the same opinion of the other parent that you do, and working on trying to convince that child that your interpretation of the marital relationship should be their interpretation of the parental relationship. Sometimes it's the same, but it's giving space for that child to be able to disagree with you, to have different life goals, to have different interests, to have different emotional reactions to a variety of things. Enmeshment means that we are still in the same body almost, right? That we are one. I mean, it's not subtle oftentimes when I see it and when I'm talking to parents about this or when I'm exposed to it in a family, it's not subtle.
It's making me think of an example. Families that are attached culturally to certain religious groups, for example. So if you're from a very conservative religious background and you have, this is what we do, this is who we are as a family, this is what our community does, this is what our values are, and everyone has a role and everyone has to face forward and move ahead in that role, that would be kind of a similar thing of, we expect you to believe this, think this.
Right. So when we're talking about enmeshment, we're talking about situations where a child has a difference of opinion. A child wants to explore an interest that the parent knows nothing about. So it's interesting. I'm going to correct myself because I said it's not subtle. And to me, I guess it's not subtle, but I'm just going to point out that in some ways it can be more subtle out in the world. So for example, I remember talking to this father who basically said like his kids were going to go to the college that he went to. And there wasn't going to be a discussion about that. Like that was the path. That was the plan. And that the kids weren't to think about what they were interested in learning. I mean, he was very clear that his children were smaller versions of himself. We did that episode a while ago on parenting phrases that drive us crazy. When somebody talks about my mini me, like my child is my mini me, I cringe a little bit. I'm like, ooh, right. I mean, it may be that they look just like you, and you can see that in families, like kids look just like their parents, but that's a little, no, they're not you. Letting them be who they are is the opposite of an enmeshed family. Yeah. The other thing too that we want to pay attention to is this idea of loyalty to the family is also a sign of enmeshment. So guilt, shame, and loyalty, which means that you are not going to talk about this family outside of the family, that you are going to be loyal to our secrets. You are going to be loyal to the way that we view the world, and any digression from those beliefs, the view of the world, what the family does, that's seen as a betrayal. That's enmeshment also.
Listeners could say, I'm from a family where culturally that was the norm. And others might not, where it wasn't a part of their experience, or it might be a little more subtle so that they haven't identified where that did show up.
Yeah. And the thing we want to be clear about is that there is wonderful joy and connection in family rituals and cultural rituals and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not talking about like everybody is an island, right? You as an individual, I'm not talking about this rugged individual is that, I am who I am, because there's going in the wrong direction in that way too. I've talked about in the past how I hear this stuff about boundaries, right? I'm going to put up this boundary, and if you don't like all of me, then you don't get any of me. We don't want to go in that direction either. This isn't every man for himself. It's a combination of loving attachment and acceptance and the room to explore who you are from a loving, accepting, secure base. That's healthy attachment. Enmeshment is there's no room for you to explore who you are. And my feelings, the way I see things and my emotions are going to be the rule for you as well. There's a book that was written about enmeshment, and so people might be able to relate to this. There's a book called When He's Married to Mom, right? And the subtitle is like dealing with your husband's enmeshment with his mother. We've all seen that. I'm sure there's like sitcoms about that. Being able to recognize that if you have a son who grows up and gets married, but the wife is like, okay, you haven't separated from your mom. I mean, that's a great title of a book, When He's Married to Mom. That's enmeshment.
We'll take a break. When we come back, let's talk about parentification.
Okay.
The holidays can be a lot. During all the stress and expectations of the holidays, therapy can be a huge help, but it can be hard to get an in-person appointment this time of year. So luckily, Talkspace has made getting the help that you need easy and affordable. You're able to access your provider from the comfort of your device, which means mental health care can be on your schedule. With Talkspace, you can get the support you need when you need it. And since nobody needs another expense this time of year, you'll be happy to hear that Talkspace is covered by most insurance companies and many employers. Check your coverage to see if you can get therapy for only the cost of an insurance copay or even for free. It's okay if the holidays aren't so cheery. With Talkspace, you can sign up online and get a personalized match with a provider who's right for you, typically within 48 hours, and it's incredibly convenient to have those virtual sessions with your licensed therapist from home. There's no need to commute to appointments. You won't miss time at work or line up childcare in order to attend sessions. It's mental health care made easy. Talkspace is secure and private using the latest end-to-end bank-grade encryption technology to store your information, complying with the latest HIPAA regulations. As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/Fluster. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to Talkspace.com/Fluster to get $80 off of your first month. That's Talkspace.com/Fluster. Hey everybody, this is Robin at Flusterclux. When Lynn and I are not having a great time recording our podcast on the weekends, I have a day job. I have a travel magazine for families. So if you're thinking about a 2023 family vacation, don't plan anything without reading our guides to the best Disney hotels, the best way to get a Disney guide for less, and everything you need to know about booking a Disney cruise. Lux Recess has been since 2014 the go-to place for parents to read about luxury travel with honest reviews written for parents by parents. Check it out. The links are in the show notes for our best guides to Florida travel for your spring break in 2023. That's luxrecess.com, LuxeRecess.com.
Okay, so now back to the show.
Okay, Lynn. So I was a child with divorced parents, and my mom definitely parentified me to an extent. And the family joke, and I say family, she was my family. So a joke we had between us later on in life, and I can talk about her because she passed. So is that one time she made a Freudian slip and she's like, do you remember when we were growing up in blah, blah, blah? She said that phrase. So she was a very youthful personality. So she saw me as a sister, as an ally. I was just talking with my daughter about this recently. I used to think that she raised such a good problem solver, but she also was like very clever in raising someone who would help take care of her. This was probably part of a plan.
And probably not a conscious plan, but this is what happens when I talk about the reversal of roles, is that you were in a parentified role. I remember you telling me about how you were so good at reading maps and planning. You have this incredible talent now. I mean, the skill, your career of traveling and creating these amazing experiences for people probably started pretty early on when you were planning the family vacations, when you were like, okay, this is where we're staying. This is where we're going.
And they'd hand me a paper map. I was 8 and it was like, and tell us how to get here.
Yeah.
But so here's the thing, and I'm not in a defensive place about this. My boundaries were respected, though, in the sense that I had privacy. I could disagree with her. I was totally my own person, and she had a rebellious streak, and she encouraged me to do that, even if it wasn't rebelling in the same sense. So how does parentification, it doesn't sync up for me. Like, how does that look like enmeshment? Because I do have a grandmother who very much was the kind of person that she wasn't that great about privacy when she was raising my mom. And she was definitely a little bit more about my emotional experience as dependent upon the happiness of everyone around me. So that I see. But like, is parentification really about enmeshment too?
Well, it can be. So, one of the things that we talk about global thinking, it's not all or nothing.
Right.
Right? It's not all or nothing. You were parentified in the role of you were promoted to an equal in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Right? In that promotion, you were treated as an equal. Your mom also allowed you to be who you were. And she also enjoyed your autonomy. She didn't require that you do everything the way that she did, but she definitely liked you more as a peer than as a little person, right? She liked having you up there with her, or even liked having you above her, right? You were going to take care of things. You were going to be the responsible one, so she could be less responsible.
Right.
This wasn't a conscious plan. She wasn't sitting saying like, okay, so how can I get Robin to blah, 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 blah. It had to do with the interaction between the way she was living her life and your personality and all that stuff. So it's not all or nothing, because you have an enormous amount of autonomy. You have an enormous amount of independence and capability. And oftentimes when kids are parentified, they do develop those skills.
My mom had a therapist appointment for the first time in her life in her late 20s. She saw this therapist for a short amount of time, but she said it was a complete game changer because my brother and I were very little at the time. And she realized that in her late 20s, her parents had raised her to still be a child, and that she didn't have autonomy, and that she didn't really take control of anything. She was cared for. And so she said in that moment, she was never going to do that to her daughter. And so she raised me to really think for myself. And like another family joke is it's like, you're 10 years old. You can make your own doctor's appointment if you're sick. So she intentionally backed away because she had such a moment in her late 20s. She was divorced. She had 2 little kids. She didn't know what she was going to do. So she was breaking from a cycle of that kind of enmeshment. And so I would say she did so partly, but that enmeshment and that parentification was still able to happen because perhaps of that enmeshment that she experienced.
Yeah. So it can be a combination of things. I mean, I'll give you an example. I had a client who had a single mom. He was the oldest of several children. Dad split and mom had to work 2 jobs, so that at the age of about 12, it was his responsibility, because his mom worked second shift, to get all of the little kids home from school, to feed them, to bathe them, and put them to bed. So at the age of 12, he was in charge of all of the younger siblings, because mom had to work. And it was the expectation from mom that he do all this perfectly. So there were many problems with this. What there wasn't in that situation, there was parentification, but there wasn't enmeshment. This mom was not there saying to this kid, you have to feel what I feel. You have to do what I do. This kid was so autonomous because of the parentification. He was actually made a single parent. He was put into the role of a single parent. Putting it back into that realm of, okay, so I'm a mom, I'm a dad, I have this family that I love. What are the things that I want you to pay attention to? Is that I want you to pay attention to whether or not you're allowing your child to have their own thoughts and feelings and experiences, whether or not you're giving them room to do things and feel things and have opinions about things that are different from your own, whether or not you're using language consistently that talks about how great it is that they're just like you, right? So when I hear a mom say about their 15-year-old daughter, she's my best friend, I cringe. It's the same as that mini-me statement. Your daughter is not supposed to be your best friend at the very stage of life when she is supposed to be figuring out how she is going to make connections outside of the relationships that she has with the family. So that's what you want to pay attention to. Enmeshment in its dramatic forms are, like the book, he's still married to his mom. Enmeshment in the more subtle forms are, I really love how much my daughter is like me, and I am going to promote that. I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to give my daughter or my son messages consistently that they are supposed to be connected to me in a way that gets in the way of their own autonomy.
Right.
That's how it shows up in sort of the more, I want to say normal, but in the sort of day-to-day letting your kids grow and explore versus my feelings are your feelings too. And what you want to think about also, if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, oh God, how do I make sure that I'm not getting enmeshed with my kid? The other thing I'll hear parents say is that my child will tell me everything, right? So I have a teenager and she'll tell me everything. Okay, the good part of that statement is that you have created a trusting relationship with your child, that they feel like that you're a person they can come to and confide in. And it probably means also that you have pretty good reactions to that, or they would stop doing that. The other thing, though, in addition to having a child that tells you all these things, is you also want to make sure that you are open to and that you are okay with them having other people that they talk to. I've said this before, but one of the things that was just this moment that I had that I remember so clearly as I was on a trip with Reed, my co-author, my pal Reed. We were presenting at some conference and we were out taking a walk and he was asking me about my boys. And my older one was 15 at the time. And I was saying, oh, he's this and this and this. And Reed just said to me, you know, he has a whole other part of his life that you know nothing about. You know that, don't you? And I was like, yes, you know,
Right.
But it was such a helpful statement because it normalized the fact that my son was going to be separate from me, which he already was. You know, I wasn't enmeshed with him, but it was just this little moment, right? You have somebody that says that to you. It's just a reminder. And so that's what you want to make sure that you're promoting. The fact that you have a child that trusts you and talks to you about things, that comes to you with their questions about relationships or sex or drugs or all the things that we want our kids to talk to us about is wonderful. That is positive attachment. But enmeshment is when there's no room for anybody else. Yes, Hermione's raising her hand in the front row. Go ahead, Hermione.
If I had a British accent, I would do it. But you've said that this episode was really about the difference between connection and enmeshment. But in fact, this episode is all the ways that our parenting attitudes, philosophies, and practice put into place the development of healthy autonomy in our kids.
Right. Because secure attachment supports autonomy. That's the place we're going. We want kids that are able to step out into the world, to know who they are, to develop healthy relationships, to have a variety of different types of connections with people. Secure attachment is the foundation upon which we build all of these other wonderful attachment skills growing up. If you're married to somebody and your therapist says, well, why don't you get the book called When He's Married to Mom? Then chances are that you're experiencing that the person you're married to doesn't have the ability to have an attachment with his mom and an attachment with you because he's too far over into the enmeshment. So yes, it's all about the ability to create an environment, to create a family, to create a relationship that allows them to leave the nest feeling equipped. That's what it's about.
Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
Feel like you're the martyr in your family? You're not alone. Hey, this is Joanne.
And Bree.
And we're from the No Guilt Mom podcast. Bree, we talk to a lot of moms.
Yeah, we sure do.
And if you're a mom who has a to-do list that is so massive that you get overwhelmed and you shut down,
or if you fall into the habit of doing everything for everyone and don't know how to change it, we can help you become a no-guilt mom.
we're going to take you from family martyr to family model. That's role model, so that you role model the behavior that you want to see out of your kids.
You're going to go from being tired and overwhelmed to energized and guilt-free.
Every week, you'll get actionable strategies that you can implement right away from the experts that we interview and from us.
We also have a whole lot of fun, so check out the No Guilt Mom podcast everywhere you listen to your favorite shows.